Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Live, Love, and Married Wives Are Live and in color. We are so happy to have you here. You know, our mission is in our name, and we are excited that you are here for what? Our season 4 opener. Y'all happy? Woo-hoo! And all the gangs here. Can you believe it, y'all? All the gangs here. You know, Proverbs 4:7 says, wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom. And in all you're getting, get understanding. And we have been planning and praying and preparing for our season 4 opener. We have a special guest who is going to drop some gems on us. I'm excited for you to meet him. But in the meantime, before we get to that, how y'all been doing?
Oh, fair to middling.
Been doing good. Look, what's up? The old people should say, I'm yet holding.
Yet holding on.
Keep it on.
Yeah, and I'm doing good too. Excited to be in this new year. I came into it a little under the weather, but I'm glad to finally be feeling back to myself and ready to just go on into this thing. So I'm doing good.
Yeah.
How about you, Lorraine?
I am doing fantastic. I'm tired, but you know what happened over the break, right? What happened over the break, y'all? Come on. The book on your knees. Pray It Forward for women who choose to fight on their knees was released, and it was a hit.
Yes, it's a hit.
The folks are going crazy. Yes. And we're going to tell you about something we're doing with the book at the end of the program today. But so that was going on over. That was released on December 26th. It is available on Amazon. Why I do not have the link in the chat, I do not know, but we will have it by the time this program is over.
Fix it.
And so we're excited about that. But you know what else? You all know I've been on that dating journey. We should call it a not dating journey.
We're not speaking that.
Because it has not happened yet, y'all. But I'm going to tell you a story. Renee told me that I was going to tell you, I should tell you all this story. Give you, what is it, Heather? The lowdown on the update. Mm-hmm. Let's get that. She is. There we are. You all who have been following us know that about a couple of months ago, I decided that I was ready to be married and find my partner. And so we decided to get back out in the dating streets and see where God leads us. And I joined some websites, and that was going not swimmingly, but I was committed to it. I am committed to it. And you have to find the right ones and different ones. So I changed over a couple of them, but I just, so far, nothing has, really sparked, but I am praying. And in fact, what I'm praying for in our 31-day fast is for my future husband. And so I am praying for that, and I am preparing for that. And so, but one thing that kind of perked my spirit up this past Saturday when I went on a walk, I had this little young thing trying to holler at his sister. 28 years old, y'all. He was 28. And
what's his name? Winston?
And he was, and he knew I wasn't 28. Because he said, wow, you look good for your age. And I didn't even know my age yet. And I was just like, I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not, but I took it as one. And he hung around and talked, and he tried to get my number. And I said, no, I can't do that, son. I didn't call him son, but I might as well have patted him on the head. And he was looking crushed. Because, he was for real. Like, well, can we at least be friends? I'm like, come on now. We all know what that's about. So
no, we can't.
So I said, we're just in different phases of our life. And that just really wouldn't work out. But thank you. I said, you did make my day. So
So there's that.
there is that. Tell you all, he really did. Obviously, it was a Sabbath, and so it was a beautiful day anyway. But I'm just saying, it's been a long time since any guy has walked up and talked to me, and certainly not a young brother like that. He was a nice. If I was 28, I would have given my number. I'll just put that out there. But so he did perk his sister's spirits up. So
Yay.
so you just walk a little different after that. But so that's the lowdown on the updates, but we'll keep you updated as things are moving along. Well, at this time, we want to bring to the stage our guest, Earnest James. Hi, Ernest.
Hey, how you doing? Hello, ladies.
Hello. You enjoying our craziness?
I love you guys' energy.
Thank you. We appreciate it. We're so happy to have you here. I met Ernest, and I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell a little bit about himself. But I'll just want to mention where I met him. Ernest and I are both in Jeremy Anderson's Next Level Speakers Academy, and part of that is just kind of creating your one sheet or your electronic press kit. People call it different things. And I had updated mine, and I posted it in the Facebook group. And I mean, it was in minutes. Ernest had reached out to me as he read it, and he was interested in, because I, do a lot of things for single women. And he reached out to me, and we arranged, and I was actually on his podcast, Deal to Heal podcast, actually December 19th. And we had a great conversation. But in the course of that, I wanted to have him on this podcast because he has two podcasts, Deal to Heal, and then he also has Girl Dad Discussions. And so I'm really interested in that. But I'm going to just let him take a few moments to talk about himself, and then we will start peppering you with questions.
So first of all, let me say thank you, ladies, for having me. It's a pleasure for me to be here and an honor. My name is Earnest James. I am a podcaster, a speaker, a author, amongst other things, minister, mentor, whole line of things. And basically, I always say at my core, I'm just a person who loves people, and I love to help people. And I don't know how much of my story you want me to go back, or just get into how the podcast and stuff started. But basically, I'm a child of sibling. Let me say a sibling. I'm a sibling of 9. There's 9 of us all together, same mom and dad. Wow. Raised in a 2-parent household. I am the oldest son. It's 4 boys, 5. I have 5 sisters, which adds to my credibility of what we're going to talk about a little later. And yeah, I mean, that's in a nutshell. Bricklayer by trade. I
love that.
That's about it.
I didn't know that. That's you get to know new things every day. So okay, so let's fast forward, and you entered the Next Level Speakers Academy. Why? And how did you end up podcasting about what you're podcasting about?
So you know what? Both of the stories kind of interchange, right? So let's go back a couple years ago. I was married at that time in my second marriage, and we probably were like 5 or 6 years in, and we kind of hit a rough patch. And so as we were working through that, one of the things that I realized was most of our differences stems from our upbringing. So again, I was raised in a 2-parent household, and my wife at the time was raised by a single mother, right? And so those differences of just not just our the way we interacted with each other, but the generations before. So I come from generations of 2 family households, where she came from generations of single mother households. And
Mm.
so a lot of our ways of raising our kids, because we were a blended family, just a lot of things we were kind of bumping heads with a little bit. But what got my attention when I sat around and thought about it was I realized that every woman I had ever talked to was a fatherless daughter. And so that kind of
Wow.
brought it to my attention. It was like, well, either I'm attracted to them or they're attracted to me, but for whatever reason, we keep connecting. And
Mhm.
so, again, me being the person I am, the first thing I thought of, well, what can I do to help this community that I'm attracted to for whatever reason? And so I started a page on Instagram called Friends of Fatherless Daughters. And I just kind of gave my input as a man, who have dealt with fatherless daughters my whole life, and just giving my opinion on, dating and different things. And so one day I was called to be asked, could I be on a podcast? I had never done a podcast before, anything like that. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And so that was the first one. I did that first one. And then there was like back to back after that. I probably did like 7.
Mhm.
One of the podcasts I was on, I ended up meeting the host. It was 2 hosts, but I ended up meeting one of the hosts in person because we did it virtually. But I ended up meeting one of the hosts in person, and we had lunch. And so over lunch, as we talked, he was like, "You should have your own podcast." And so I said, "Well, okay, well, I'll think about it." And I kind of thought over it and what I wanted it to be about. And so I came up with Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, was my very first podcast. And what we do, my guest and I talk about topics and ways to help us heal in every area of our lives.
Mhm.
So I talk about things that I've been through, my divorce, my depression, suicide ideations, that whole thing. And then for the things that I haven't been through, I bring on coaches or, coaches, authors, people that has been through it, do different obstacles, and talk about how they overcame, and just to give my audience a wide range of topics, of whatever you may be dealing with. I try to find somebody in that arena. But going back, still being connected to that fatherless daughter community, one of the things that I would do is whenever I would have a girl dad on, I would always ask them 2 questions. What does it mean for you to be a girl dad? And what is something that your daughter has taught you?
Mm.
And so through having those questions all the time, it kind of got to the point that we were having such great conversations around it. I said, well, I need to make that into a podcast. And so not to date. Well, I guess we're live, so it don't matter if we dated. So last year on Father's Day, I released the first episode of the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. And we are a couple of episodes in now. We're bi-weekly, so every other Friday, the episodes come out. And I started off with just fathers. And then I started doing daughters too. So now we've had fathers and daughters on. And I myself am a father. I have one biological child, which is my daughter, who will be 21 in a couple months. So, I'm a father of a daughter. I have 5 sisters. And of course, like I said, every woman I've dated was a fatherless daughter. And so that all kind of added up, right? As I was kind of doing doing the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. And one of the things that I started writing just from my own experience. And so I wrote a ebook called The 4 Core, which if you guys can see it. So it's called The 4 Core, which is the 4 core values that every daughter should get from her father, right? And I drew that from, number one, being a son, right? And watching my father raise my 5 sisters. Then being a brother to those 5 sisters and interacting with them and having discussions with them about their lives and things that was going on. And then being a father myself of a daughter, like I said, my daughter's going to be 21. So I just put all those things together and those experiences and said, okay, what do I think as a father is the most important things for me to instill, not only in my daughter, but every father should be instilling in their daughters. And that's how I came up with the Core 4. So I don't want to just keep rambling.
No, I that. I didn't know if any of the ladies had a question for you, because we are going to go through the core four. But before we do that, I wanted to hear from someone else.
I just wanted to say it's so funny that not funny, but when you talked about your dynamics of your previous marriage, or the fact that you did come from a 2-parent home, but she came from a line of strong women. And that was kind of my upbringing. Even though my dad was there for a while, he died. My stepdad, he died suddenly, but all of the women in my family were single women. And I got to see the relationships and kind of how the dynamics played out, and the women having to be more of the stronger one, or even when they got a man who was strong, they couldn't let him lead because they were so used to not having that father. And so as we've been on this journey with these ladies anyway, with us dealing with healing and overcoming some generational things, I'm just excited to see that you tapped into that, because there is a huge, I think I wouldn't even just say community. I think it's a whole generation of women who were raised in fatherless homes, and boys too, who were in fatherless homes. And we're seeing the impact of that now, and kind of how we relate to each other, how our relationships are, and our self-esteem, and all these other things that you kind of wrote about in your 4 cores. So I just wanted to mention that before you start breaking down what all the 4 cores are, and then the poor core.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else, Renee or Ebony?
Yeah, I don't have a question yet. Don't get me wrong. I have questions, but not at this point. But one thing that I will say is that I just appreciate the fact that you're doing this, because when we think about women with daddy issues, right off the bat, for me, one of the first things that crosses my mind is how these young ladies are written off. So here you are, attracted and having these relationships with these women, which actually is like the grounds for you to really learn, a little bit about how they are, how they operate, and some of those effects of not having their dad. But the fact that you did not, cast these women aside, but instead you saw a need and you decided to come in and to work to help. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. E?
I'll chime in. I have questions later. I'm good now.
Okay. So, Ernest, I wanted to start with maybe before we get to the book, I want to talk about just for a minute your relationship with your daughter. Like, how did you raise her? Were you alone? Were you married at some point to that? How did that go? And how did that influence what you actually wrote in the book?
Yeah, so my daughter, me and her mom was married probably until she was 7 or 8. We were married, and then we ended up getting divorced. For a few years, they were still in the same state as I am, and then they end up moving away. So our relationship ended up being a long distance, relationship, and so of course it was harder, to stay involved. But just going back to the beginning, like my daughter, everywhere I went, she was with me, right? And so to the point, everybody called her my shadow, because it was always us two. Because generally, the way me and her mom worked, I worked days, she worked nights. Then we would have weekends or whatever. So a lot of the time when I had my daughter, she was with me all the time. And so it was like, oh, that's your shadow. And then, of course, she's our only child and a daddy's girl. So, so we were ride and die. And so, after we were divorced, that definitely took a toll on the relationship. And then living in separate houses and having to learn the co-parenting thing and all of that. Not to mention, I will go on to get remarried. Right. And so when I got remarried, that's where the blended family came in, because my wife at the time, she had 4 sons. And so there was 5 of us now coming together to build this dynamic, build this blended family, which worked out very well. And I just want to throw this, and this would be a whole nother subject, so I don't want to necessarily go down this road. But if we talk about the relationships of parents, number one, and then relationships of men and women after divorce. So me and I don't like, necessarily like calling her my ex-wife, but we've been friends our entire life, right? So we knew each other. We met in kindergarten, and so we've been connected ever since then, right? And so even when we were in our teens, we were each other's first boyfriend and girlfriend when we was like 12 or 13 or whatever. Anyway, so we've known each other our whole life, right? So we were friends longer than we were married. And so when it started coming to the end of the marriage, one of the things that was important to me and her was that we don't lose our friendship, even though we've come to the end of the marriage. And so we were able to, now I think it's been like 3 or 4 years, but we were able to maintain our friendship and maintain the strength of our family. And one of the things that I'm very happy about, even in the midst of that, is her relationship with my daughter, because their relationship is just awesome, and she's able to have this person who she can call a friend and also get guidance from, that they have conversations that I don't even know about, unless it's something important. But every now and then her stepmom would call me and say, "Hey, daughter, call me today." And I'm like, "How she call you? She didn't even call me." Because she's away at college. And so it's like, you're getting more phone calls than I get, But I really appreciate that relationship that they have, And so, so that's just a little bit, but so our relationship is great. She's with me now from college. She'll be with me for a little while before she go back to college. But of course, we had our with the long distance, that played a part. I would have to travel to. They lived in Texas. I live in Chicago, so I would have to travel to Texas to see her. And then, and I don't know. I can't speak on her experience outside of my vision. Let me put it that way. But I know that she had some challenges, and so that's one of the things that I kind of stress with, even with the co-parenting, even with fathers, even more importantly, like whatever you have to do, you have to be in your child's life, especially your daughters, your sons too, your kids, period. Right. But I always say, in the absence of a father, there's so much that could happen, and there are stories that I've heard, things that I've been told that, would just make you weep, that without the protection, let's just go there, without the protection of a father, your daughter, and even all your children, but definitely your daughters, are left so vulnerable at times, not being able to be protected. And so my thing just for fathers, like just whatever it takes, And I always talk about with going through we went through a period even with my dad where he lost his job, and we went from living like the American dream with the big house and the cars and the camper and all of that to a husband and wife and 9 kids, 11 people staying in one bedroom at my grandmother's house. We end up losing everything. And I always say, if my dad can stick through all of that with us and 9 kids, then you can stick with your one. You know what I mean? And that even is something I had to say to myself, just being honest, because in the midst of my divorce from my first wife, who is my daughter's mom, it wasn't really good in the beginning, and so there was some struggle with, making sure that I'm, getting my daughter when I'm supposed to and all of that. So I definitely got frustrated, to the point that I was like, you know what, I'll just wait till she get 18. And thankful for me that only lasted like a second. That thought only lasted like a second, because one of those thoughts was, your dad didn't wait till you was 18, and it was 9 of y'all. You know what I'm saying? And then just knowing my heart, like, no, I couldn't do that, to my daughter. But I always think about that, just like we got to stick it out. We got to stick it out for whatever it takes for our children. We got to stick it out, especially our daughters.
Well, I love. Okay.
Go ahead. I'll chomp after you. I didn't mean to cut you off.
We got some people backstage that are probably supposed to be waiting for the recording link. So you just let them know that. We're going to have a great conversation at the end. So I was going to say that one thing that I know that you would agree with is that what you're talking about, good fathers, healthy fathers, nurturing fathers, not people who are abusive or anything like that, because that's not advantageous for a daughter to have in her life. Of course, you are advocating for people to be healthy, healed. So that's, we want to make sure that we say that, because we know people out there who had fathers in the home who were disasters. And so we want to just acknowledge that. So let's start with going through the core four, and we'll start with number one. Go
Okay.
ahead.
You want me to say that, or you?
I do.
So just to run through all four real quick. So the core four values that every daughter should get from her father is guidance, love and affection, affirmation, and protection. So those are the four. So the first one, when we talk about guidance, I always say it's more than just right and wrong, right?
Mhm.
It's the pouring into of how to make sound decisions, right? And a lot of it, I like to say, and I get in trouble for this, but I'm still gonna say it. a lot of our ladies are more emotional than the men are sometimes, right? And so even with that is teaching them how to make sound decisions out of facts and not feelings. Because a lot of times we're so in touch with our feelings that our feelings guide everything that we do. You know, how does this make me feel in the moment? You know, but to be able to give your daughter that guidance of, okay, despite how you feel, what are the facts of the situation? Because your feelings will change from second to second, moment to moment, but the facts will stay the same. So if you can make sound decisions off the facts of the situation, then you'll be okay with the outcome, you know, no matter how you feel in the midst of the moment, you know. And then I always say, even with that guidance, again, going back to not just right or wrong, but I like to say good, better, or best, even when it comes to decisions, right? So not too long ago, I had the conversation with my daughter of wanting to go and buy her first car, you know, and she's like, hey, I'm saving up and I'm, you know, want to have a good down payment, all of that. And I said, well, that's good. So that's a good decision. But a better decision is, let's fix your credit. Let's make sure your credit is good, you know, so that you can walk in there with no down payment and put that money in your pocket, you know, and you begin to learn your credit and financial literacy and what that means to be able to sign your name and walk out the door. You know what I mean? And so even to be able to make those decisions, like just better decisions, you know. And so that was the guidance. So the next one is affirmation.
Wait, before you go to the next one, I don't know if anyone had any comment on that.
Yeah, so that was I'm glad you clarified that, because, you know, just to be transparent, in the book, that statement about fathers and men in general being more factual, women, girls being more emotional, gave me pause. I'll be transparent, gave me pause, because I feel like sometimes our emotions are weaponized, right? Like we are made to feel like we can't make good decisions because we're so emotional. We're in such an emotional headspace. And I think that my hope would be that when fathers approach their daughters with the facts, that they are still validating the emotions and not teaching them to suppress them and make only factual decisions, because either way, in my opinion, is unbalanced. So I appreciate the fact that you put some color and context to that.
Yeah, and then not to jump to the next one or another one, but I talk about that kind of connects even with the protection. But that's a key point, and that's why I definitely don't want us to change our not have emotions, because we all have emotions, right? So it's okay to be emotional, especially when something affects you emotionally, you know. However, when it comes to making decisions and the facts of whatever the situation that you're facing, you want to make the decisions based off the facts of it and not, you know, lean to your emotions. So definitely still our daughters need to still be in touch with their emotional side, but just being able to push the emotions to the side just for a minute when making sound decisions when dealing with those situations. Just make it easier. Like I said, just dealing with the facts and make it easier, to deal with the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anyone else on guidance?
Yeah, also in this guidance section, you also talked a lot about the setting of boundaries. I thought that was really important too. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, so boundaries, the way I define boundaries, I say boundaries do a couple things. It protects us from others, it protects others from us, but then it also protects us from us, right? Us from ourselves. And so again, if we were talking about just dealing with the emotions, not having proper boundaries can let people in too close who shouldn't be too close, and at the same time push out people who should, necessarily be pushed out. And so in the book, also I talk about, I have a section, I don't know if it's in the book, I might have put it in the book, but one of the things that I talk about is the difference between friends and fillers, right? When dealing with male friends, or fillers as I call them, because a friend is a person, will be a male, and again, I'm talking to fatherless daughters, a male that comes into your life with no expectations, but yet pours even these same values into you as a friend. A filler, however, will come in and they will pretend, or they may provide to a certain extent some of those values, but they're looking for something on the back end, right? And on the other side, they're never 100% try to fill the void, because if they fill the void, that takes commitment, that takes dedication, that takes them really investing in you, and that ain't what they're there for. So when the fillers come in, they're in there to get what they want from you, whatever that is, but they're going to give you just enough. They're going to fill that void just enough where they can get what they ask, what they're trying to get from you. And so being able to make those proper boundaries of, okay, how do I kind of look at this person to see, is this person good for me? Not necessarily good to me, but good for me, because a lot of times we get caught up in, oh, they make me feel good, they make me smile, they make me laugh. But then 10 minutes from now, are you still smiling after they've said something to you that hurt your feelings, after they've physically done something to you that made you feel another way? But because our boundaries may not be in place, now we're looking past that, and looking at, but they still make me smile. No, you have to take that in consideration, though. Like that smile changes to a frown real fast. So we have to be able to set those proper boundaries.
Yeah, I really love that. I have an example of that, though. I have a male friend from a very, very long time ago, strictly platonic. And as I was reading, your material, I was literally thinking about this person and the value that they have had, or the value that I have for them, just as a friend in my life. And I remember, this was so many years ago, but he and I had gone out to lunch one day. We were sitting outside eating, and this girl walks by. And she is dressed, I mean, you could see her whole Social Security number. She was not wearing much of anything, right? And so when I see her, my thought is that he's going to be ogling. He's going to be eyeing her, right? But instead, his response was totally different. He actually looked at her and he kind of shook his head a little bit. And he was like, she ain't got no daddy. And when I tell you that one moment changed my whole life.
Wow.
Because I can't really, I'm not really sure how to describe what happened, but I'm just going to use fear, because it like scared the mess out of me. Because for me in my situation, I would say, this is actually new based on a guest that we had last season. But as far as my dad, I would say that he held the position but did not fulfill the role. No disrespect. It's just a fact from my perspective. But having that friend to make that statement put a fear in me that says, oh my goodness, I do not want to carry myself or present myself in a way where men or anybody can immediately look at me and say, she ain't got no daddy. Because having a dad means you have an idea of how to protect yourself. And that's through your presentation, through your dress, through your talk, through your this and that. And so over the years with him as my friend, he has helped me just by, being that listening ear, being that male perspective, just helping in some of those ways. And so when you're talking about friends versus fillers, I'm just really grateful for my friends, because where I do have that void, they have come in and helped so much over the years.
Yeah.
And I would say, Ernest, that I would like you to do a second edition of your book and add more, say more, like what you're saying, add more to the book, because I just think that there's so much more that you have in your head that people need to hear,
Yeah.
because that the friend and filler part is really good. So let's go to number 2.
So the second one is love and affection. And I put these together, right? And so when I talk about love, I want to say the expression of love, right? Physically, because I'll even say physically. So we always say that our daughters, we should be our daughter's first date, right? We should be the first man that she loved, and the first example of what that looks like, what it looks like to show affection, what it looks like to create that safe space for her to be herself and to express herself, and all of that comes from the love of a father, and that takes a pouring into, and takes some speaking it out, and it takes some actions. And then it also goes into the affection part of it, because what does that feel like, right? And so as I talked about a little earlier, with the boundaries, when you have someone who says they love you, but then they physically put their hands on you, it's like, okay, did my dad do that? Is that how my dad showed me love? Is that how he, when my dad said he loved me, he caressed me. When my dad said he loved me, he kissed me on my jaw, on my forehead. He never hit me. So those things, to be able to show this is what real love looks like, even in discipline, even in disagreements, right? Even with that. And so, prime example, one of the things that I always wanted to do with my daughter is show her what it looks like to be in a, not necessarily relationship, but just I would say a relationship, just to be in a relationship with a man, even in conversation, right? So I was very intentional with how I treated her mother, and also how I treated her stepmother. Because God forbid one day she get married and get divorced and then get married again, so now you're in a different place. So I wanted to show her that a man could still be respectful even at the end of the relationship. You can be respectful during the relationship. My daughter's never seen me with her mom or her stepmom, never seen us argue, never seen me, never have I ever called either of them out of their name or anything like that. And it's like, no, there's a way to behave. There's a way to present yourself, and even in the space where you don't see eye to eye, don't mean you got to be fist to fist. You know what I'm saying? Like, you should be able to use your words and speak how you feel and say what you mean without it turning into something else. And so being that example of, you've never seen me do that. You've never seen me raise my voice at your mom or your stepmom or any other woman, my sisters or anybody. You've never seen me do that. So therefore, that's something you should not tolerate in any man, friend or foe. Do not tolerate the disrespect. Do not tolerate being treated any kind of way, being talked to any kind of way, because that's not the example that I laid for you. So if anything happens, you can always look back and say, well, how does this person match up against what my dad has showed me, and so that's for why we as men, as fathers, have to show that love and affection, because Bobo and Nuck Nuck is coming. You know what I'm saying? They coming, like it or not. You know what I mean? And so sometimes our daughters are attracted to men just like us, or they're attracted to men the opposite of us. But yet the example, if you set the example, whichever way she likes, whether she like the nice guy or the thug, she still can have an example of how she's supposed to be treated, regardless of his personality. So.
Onita?
Yes, that was so good. That was so good. I was going to say, and Ernest, you may have found this where a lot of people can relate to, at least my generation, I'm 44, about to be 45. a lot of times the father's role in the home was to provide, pay the bills, but also discipline. And a lot of times, I mean, the Bible talks about discipline and love, but a lot of us also got the other part, spare the rod. And so unfortunately, I show a lot of times dads only got called into discipline. And so you growing up and having that be sometimes part of the role of the father, you didn't get what you're talking about, the softer side, or to be, to get the hugs and all of that. Because even that, I know I was listening to TD Jakes one day. He even said he knew his dad loved him, but his dad never said it. He'd get like a grunt, like, you kind of knew it, you kind of knew it because dad, he, took care of the bills, and dad got the big chicken and all of that. And so I'm glad that the generations have evolved to be able, the men understand expressing the love. We need to hear it. But also I can say I identify with recognizing, even in myself and even some of my siblings, because even when we're little girls, for some reason, and maybe it's families, I don't know if you all can speak to this or not, but I remember one time being like 7 or 8, and I went to sit on my dad's lap, something I normally do. And one of his sisters were around. She was like, "Girl, get off your dad's lap. That's nasty." And I, like, my brain just kind of, I didn't know, because in my mind, I'm like, at that point, I didn't know anything about anything. But I remember how it made me feel that day, the discomfort of just going and sitting on my dad's lap. And I didn't anymore.
Wow.
And so it put up this awkwardness that was not there. Like, you planted a seed that should not have been there, because I should feel comfortable around my dad. I should feel like I can get hugs and do whatever with them. But I can clearly see the results of not getting the type of love you're talking about, and the affection, and where that drove me to, or where it drove me to seek it from. And so how important it is for dads with your father, stepfather, or uncle, because even once our dad died suddenly, there weren't any men in the family who kind of came around to be that person. We may have gotten it at school. God rest his soul, Mr. Wallace. He was still more of a stern lover. Yeah. Like, I don't think I ever got a hug. I may have. If I did, I took it. But we didn't have that. And so I could see just the ripple effect of not getting that, and what it does to us to not be able to have that. And especially how it causes us to choose our mate, whether good or bad, and not to know our self-worth and our value, and how to ask for what we want and require people to treat us a certain way. And especially when it comes to how we want to be loved, and knowing that we can say, no, this is how I need to be loved, and not accepted and not tolerated. So again, I just am excited that you wrote that. And I don't know how many men tune in, but I'm going to be sharing the heck out of this. And that they pick up the book, because it's a short read, but you hit all of the core points.
Yeah. And I agree with you with that. So my dad, I'm 47, right? And so my dad, even coming from that generation of not necessarily saying I love you, right? So my dad would say it after he had a drink, right? So then you get that far side, right? Go all the way to the other side. On one hand, when he's sober, he just kind of, quiet, straight to the point, But then after he get a little drink, and then he wants to come hug you, kiss you and stuff, he's like, "Come on, Dad," And then that side comes out where he's like, "Hey, I love you, I love you," he playfully. And it wasn't until my mom passed away some years ago that he changed to the point where he would say it all the time. You know what I mean? And he says it more often, on his own. He'd just say it, and it's still rare. It's still rare. Every now and then we have a text stream, message stream with all my brothers and sisters where we can, because some of us live in different states. And every once in a while, when he says it, like he'll text it to one of them, whatever, then they'll be like, "Hey, Dad said he loved me today," because it's still rare, but he does say it a lot more than he used to, because my mom, again, was always that buffer, and he would always say, and these was his words still to this day, "Respect me and love your mother." That was all something he would say to us all the time, like, respect me, but love your mother. And so I guess in his mind, maybe that even with that generation, they kind of did leave the love or just to show the same love, because he definitely showed it, but the saying and the expression of it wasn't so much until after my mom passed away, and then he was, more open to saying and stuff. So so I definitely know that.
Ebony?
So I want to kind of jump in on that a little bit. Those who know me know that I was raised by my father, and my father was a provider. Like, I've never wanted for anything in my life. Like, literally, I've never wanted for anything, because my dad always made sure that I had the best education, I had the best clothes, I had the best everything. He sacrificed for his kids. And my dad was also very he was also very reserved with his affection. And growing up, it was something that I wanted. And when I got married, I didn't know how to receive that, and I didn't know how to give it, because I hadn't had that. That wasn't my lived experience. But what I will say is that my husband's his consistency in speaking that to me, and saying that, this is something that is just to be transparent, a deficit in you, right? But I didn't have the understanding of, like, why, until kind of doing the work to understand, because it's not what I got, it's not what I had growing up. And my husband, it's still something that I work through. But to your point about, marrying your father or dating your father, 100%, like, my husband is my dad. Like, I don't want for anything. I'm not going to want for anything. He's going to work, and I had that example from my father of, what to look for in a man. My husband is providing that to our daughters. We have 2 daughters. And my daughter just said the other day, my husband was doing something for me. Oh, he bought me a new antique vanity that I had been longing for. And my daughter said, she calls him Pa. Don't even understand why. But she was like, Pa, I hope I have a husband like you. You do, and she just kind of ran the list of the things that my husband does. And I could see, like, his chest expanding, I could see that love in her eyes. And I was like, yeah, any man who comes into her life has a high bar. And he's very intentional about that.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Number 3.
Let me say this real quick. And one of the things that I always say, and especially speaking to men, fathers, but not just fathers, but then speaking to men on the flip side, is, as a woman, you never stop needing a core 4. You never stop needing it. You just looking for it from someone else.
Yes.
Right. So your father pours into you till you get to the point where you choose to mate. And then now, of course, let's go back to old school. When the husband have to ask for the dad for his daughter's hand in marriage. Right. So now when the father gives you that hand, now she becomes your responsibility. So now she's looking for them same core 4s, but now she's looking it from you. And so that's why I said the book is for men and women, fathers and daughters, because they never stop needing it. You're just looking for it from a different person now. So and good. I'm glad you found that.
No, I'm glad you pointed that out, because it also helps you in your search. If you're not married and you are vetting and you're seeing, oh, I do get affirmation, I do get love and affection, I do get guidance, and I am open to listening to that guidance, because there's some men that you just like, I'm not really listening to you. So now there's a disconnect there, versus someone who's like, yeah, I'm submitted to that. I value his input, I value his guidance, and I want to submit to that. And so yeah, I love that. So affirmation. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So with affirmations, and let me say something real quick. So, and I don't want to go on a tangent, but you said a key word, right, which is submission, and that sometimes becomes a curse word. But you also said something, and this is what I always say: women, you get to choose. You get to choose who you follow, right? Just because he asks you for your number don't mean you got to give it to him. Just because he asks you to marry him don't mean you got to marry him. You know what I'm saying? Like, you get to choose. So when you're looking for someone and this man comes into your life, you're looking for someone who you don't mind following, right? Who you don't mind saying, okay, it's no problem with me being submissive because I trust your judgment. You get to choose that. So submission shouldn't be a curse word. It actually should be an empowering word, right? Because you get to make that choice of who you decide to follow, right? Yeah. And so you shouldn't have a problem with his decisions when you saw the decisions before y'all got married. Like, you see how he spent this whole check. You see that.
That's right. You say in the word right there, brother.
So I always like to point that out. Just like submission is actually. I'm not going to. We did
a whole episode on submission, on biblical submission, and I'm gonna send you the link because it was good. It was good.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to go down there. We'll be going on that space. So, affirmation, right? So when I talk about affirmation, I talk about a father telling his daughter something that she should already know about herself, but just in case she needs to hear those words, right? You need to hear that you are beautiful. You need to hear that you are smart. You need to hear that you are wonderful. You need to hear that you are intelligent. You know, all those words that affirm the things that you should already know inside, you know, but just in case you didn't know, or just in case you forgot, or just in case you just need to hear it, you know, that's where we come in as a father to pour into our daughters, to lift their spirits so they'd be able to look in that same mirror and say, you know, or to go back when I talk about Bobo and Nuck Nuck coming, you know what I'm saying? And just to come up and say, hey, you're beautiful. It's like, yeah, I already know because my daddy told me. You know what I'm saying? So you're not gonna come in at that easy and just tell me something to try to make me feel good, you know, because I've heard that before. And not only did I hear it, but I heard it from someone who I knew meant it, right? I heard it from someone.
Wasn't trying to get nothing from me. Wasn't trying to get anything from me. He just said it because it was true. Wow.
Important into you because it was something that you needed, you know, and to be able to, you know, pour that into our daughters and say, okay, this is who you are. Let me tell you who you are. You know, I don't know. I don't remember if my grandmother wrote this poem, but I remember us we used to say it all the time. Or they should say it on usually around like Black History Day. But it was a poem called "Hush, Black Child," right? And so in this poem, it was a long poem. Like I said, I think my grandmother wrote it, but I'm not sure. But in the poem, the child was complaining, and so the grandmother was like, "Hush, black child," and then she started telling her all the black. You know, and still about why your black is beautiful. And it talks about the inventors and people that came before us, that laid the roads before us, all these black people who poured, you know, into us. And so I always remember that because it's like that voice that says, you don't know let me tell you who you are. Even when you get to complaining, like, I don't feel good, or I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not this, like, wait a minute, hush, black child. Let me tell you who you are, just in case you do that. And so our daughters need that from their fathers. Let me tell you who you are. You are my daughter, first and foremost. You're my child. And as being my child, I know what's in you because you're part of me. So let me tell you what's inside you that you might not have discovered yet. Right. Let me tell you how beautiful you are, how smart you are, how intelligent you are, how you are able to accomplish anything that you put your mind to, you know. And so that's where the affirmation comes in and building up that spirit and building up that inner person, you know. And this is where we start talking about the self-worth and knowing their worth and their own value. That's where we come in as fathers like this. We lay that groundwork, right? We lay that foundation of who they begin to see themselves as. And as we pour into them to affirm this is who you are, then that's the starting point. And as they learn themselves and they grow, then they have a strong sense of who they are when they step out into this world.
Yes.
I love that.
I can tell my girls their hair is pretty. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lorraine.
No, go ahead.
I would say I can say to my girls, your hair look cute, and they know it. I mean, my husband's always told them they're beautiful, but when Dad says it,
yes, girl,
it's like a whole different glimmer on them. It's like it just does something different when the father says it.
Yes.
You know, I have a story for everything. I have a story for that. I never met my biological dad. He is deceased. But I did meet my biological grandmother, I'm going to say maybe about 4 years ago, right? She passed last year. But in that short period of time where I knew her, I felt a love that I had never felt before.
Mhm.
But when we're talking about the love of a father, there is something that she said that was so small, but it had a massive impact on me. And I'm going to tell you the story, but I was just thinking, if this little portion of a percentage of love that I feel from what she said is what women with a father feel on a grander scale, oh my gosh. So the story is, I was talking to my grandma. I had gone to get my hair cut one day. And so when I got it cut, the person cut more than I wanted or whatever. And I was so upset because I'm natural. Like, we value, the length of our hair, because it's not just length, it's time. Like, it took me time to get this length. And so, she cut off like 6 months, you know what I mean? And so I tell my grandma, and I'm just like, I can't believe. And my grandma said, it chokes me up when I say this. Excuse me, hold on one second. She said, oh, I wish your daddy was here. Do y'all know what that did to me?
Wow.
I was like, in that little phrase,
Yes.
I felt like a protection, a security.
Yes.
I don't know if he would have went to fight for me. I don't want him to fight, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
whatever that is she's referring to, I was like, I like that.
Yes.
I like it.
Yes.
And so, yeah, with certain things in my life, I think I was going to cry on this episode. I was doing pretty good. But I said,
You almost made it.
but I said to myself after that, I was just like, when I'm experiencing certain things, I literally asked myself, what would my daddy do? My grandma's gone now, but I still hear her voice. I wish your daddy was here. And that, do you see how small that was? But it felt so good. And that man is not even alive to have given that to me himself.
That's amazing.
That is.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
This is kind of came into my mind, that this idea that we know God is a spirit and all that. We don't even really know what that means. But the fact that God portrays himself in the Bible as Father.
Yes.
This doesn't negate mothers. We know mothers are important, whatever. That's not the point of this episode. But the fact that God portrays himself as Father and says, oh, you may not have the best father. You may not know, but I'm your father. And that is so important. So when he gives you a daughter or son and puts you in their life as father, he's saying, I need you to represent me with the way that you affirm the love and affection, the guidance. We're going to get to protection next, but that's me. And so when you have a father and you feel that, it's like a piece of God that that is being put on in your life, you know, and covering you. So
when Ernest was describing, like, that father affirming his daughter, it sounded like it sounded like God the Father. It sounded like what God tells us in his word, how he speaks over us and how he speaks life and joy and affirmation over us. And it's like, if there is a woman, who does not have that in her life, then God provides that.
Yes.
God provides that for that woman who doesn't have that earthly father to give her that affirmation. It's just another level of amazement of how awesome God is.
And let me just say what I was going to say when you first were saying, I love the fact that you said, I'm affirming what she already knows is.
Yes.
That was awesome, because a lot of times we think of affirmation as basically telling you what you are, and then you have to believe it because I said it. You're saying, no, I'm starting off from beginning to help you know this is who you are, and I'm just reminding you. I'm just reminding you, because sometimes we need to hear it. We're all of this, but sometimes we just need to hear someone say, you're beautiful, you're smart, you're doing a great job. Validation because the world can beat up on you sometimes, even when you
Mhm.
know, you walk out knowing, and then you come back like unsure. You're like, you know, and to have a dad say, or father figure say, no, you got this. You. And so to me, that was, I love when you put it like, you framed it like that, like, oh yeah, I do know who I am because I was raised, because he told me from the beginning. So now I know who I am, and now he's just reminding me when I need to be, when I need my head, when my head is hanging like this, and I just need someone to pick it up.
Yes.
I love that. I love that.
My husband literally does that to our daughter. If she's having a difficult day and sometimes she'll hang her head, and he literally lifts her head.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Protection.
So protection, first of all, protection, we always think about the physical protection, right? We always think about the scene in Bad Boys with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, right? When the boy comes to date the daughter, and we always think about that, right? And again, that is an important part of being a father, to be able to physically protect your children, right? And I don't want to dismiss that, because again, like I mentioned earlier, in the absence of a father, a lot of things can happen to your children, right? And so you definitely want to be in the life of your kids. You definitely want to be active. And so that being said, the protection part of it is definitely needed, but that is something that we naturally already kind of know, and kind of like, all right, if something happens, daddy gonna have my back. But what I talk about in the book is changing that word from protection, from providing protection, to providing safety. And that kind of goes back to what you just said, Lorraine, about when you step out into this world, there are going to be people that's going to try to set you down, to try to tell you to shut up, that don't want to hear your voice, right? And so as a father, it's up to me to provide that physical protection, but that safety of letting my daughter know it's okay to be you. It's okay to be you in whatever way that you want to express that. So you have a voice, right? And it's okay for you to use it. It's okay if something makes you feel a certain way, you feel this is a safe space where you can say, this is how that made me feel. If you think of a certain way, this is why I think this, or this is how I feel, or how I think about this. And to have that, to create that safe space where now, because I've been raised in this home of physical protection, but also the safety to express myself the way that I want to, I can show up in the world fully me, right? And to be able to express myself when someone else comes to me to contradict what it maybe is that I feel about myself. And, and I would say, like, especially, you get women in the workplace and things like that. And then sometimes there are men who may be bosses or whatever, and I don't want to hear what you got to say, or shut you down, or I don't want to see your ideas or whatever. No. I have that protection in me that my dad gave me to feel free to express myself how I feel. No, this is how I feel about this. Going back to that, you're not going to talk to me any kind of way. You're not going to, do this. But again, also going back to reading the room as far as how to react to the situation on facts and not feelings, I'm going to tell you how I feel respectively. You know what I mean? So you're not going to say I was insubordinate or nothing like that, but you're going to get what I understand. You're going to say what I have to say. Right. And it's up to us as dads to raise our daughters with that, knowing that you're not always going to be under my roof. Again, my daughter, she's with me now from college, but she's been away from me for, as far as living under the same roof for me, for years. Like when I would go see her, we would stay together, at the hotel or whatever we decided to do when I would visit, or when she would come here for a limited time. But now she's been here with me for a couple months. So this is the first time with us being under the same roof every single day, like wake up and you're there, in a long time. So that being said, and even in my current situation, she's only here for a while. And then she got to go back to college. So she's going to be going back out from under my roof back into this world. And so I have to prepare her every time she gets under my roof, within my touch, within my voice,
Mm.
where she can hear my voice, I got to let her know, hey, despite of what this world may say, despite of who may be out there saying one thing and whatever, this is who you are. Stand strong in who you are. Speak your voice, respectably, but speak your voice, speak your mind, and don't be ashamed to express yourself the way that you feel,
Mm.
And so that's again, I know that the physical protection is important, but I think that safety and
Yes.
being yourself and being fully able to show up as the full you is more important in that sense of protection.
Yeah.
No. I love that
Oh my goodness.
because the reality is, how often does that even come up, that your father has to physically, literally protect you? Like, my father never had to do that. Like, it's not like there were all these people attacking me and he was just like fighting off stuff. It's like, but like, we say protection we do think about it as physical, but it's like, does that really happen that often? And of course, if it is happening, I'm not going to run in front of him. Like, of course he's deceased, so he probably can't help me right now. But I'm just saying that I like that, because that's how life is. We have to go out in the world and to be able to feel safe to speak your truth, speak not in that weird, there's truth, there's God's truth, but to speak what matters to you, to say what your preference is, to say what what you care about, to express your opinion. And I didn't have that for a long time. I have it now, but but one of the best compliments a man ever gave me was that he said, I admire how you're able to speak truth to power.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in an environment where, everybody didn't look like me. And, we're talking like millionaire people and rich people. And I was on the board and I had to speak up because I was in charge of programs and stuff. And like, it was the day that I was leaving the organization and they were having a party. I don't remember a lot of what other people said, but I remember that. Like, I have not forgotten that. And I just think that's so important. Now we're going to start wrapping up. We were going to talk about the poor four, but I don't even want to talk about the poor four, because I just think that we see that everywhere. We know we know what the impact of not having a father is. And I just love the fact that we were able to talk about this. And like, this to me is just giving me life. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And we can go all over and find and see what not having a father has done, but to have it, I just love this. So I wanted to ask you, as we wrap up, okay, yes, that if someone didn't have this a woman didn't have this growing up, she's listening, or she will listen, or she knows that she's in a deficit. As as we wind down, just kind of your last comment, what can she do to kind of restore this, or create this in herself, these qualities? And if she's married or has a boyfriend and he notices, what can he do? What can be done in the back end if we don't do it in the front end? That's the short of it.
Well, I always say, first you have to start with yourself, because the self is the only thing you actually can't control, right? The only person that you actually can control. You can't control what your father did or didn't do, or the male mentors who may have been your life, uncles, grandfathers. You can't control what they did or didn't do. You can't control what your husband does or don't do, right? So you have to start with yourself, because that's the only thing that you can control. That's the only person that you can control, right? And so as you work to get into, definitely, I would say, self-development, which is something I even myself got into the last couple of years, and begin to know myself, right? So really get into self-development to really know, who am I? Who am I personally? What are those things that mean the most to me? Right. And then as you begin to search out the information of, and I like to say, a lot of times when I talk to adult fatherless daughters, they say, well, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm all right. And I always say, how do you know that when you have no reference point? You know what I'm saying? You grew up without something and you can't say you're okay without it because you don't know what it is to have it. Right. And so to get the start doing the work on your inner self and even reading the books and things like that of what that looks like, those things, those values that fathers add, even listening to the podcast. And that was one of the reasons why I started the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, is to have the conversations with other dads to show combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. Like, no, there are fathers here that love their daughter and are pouring into their daughters, right? And so I was asked, give us something for the dads and give us something for the daughters that they can take out of the conversations that we have. And so just finding that resources to begin to build up yourself. And then once you have, sort of knowing what it is that you're missing, again, the core four is a good place to start. These are the values that I may have missed from my father. And so now you have a blueprint to hold against the men in your life. And so there are men who are willing to be friends, not the fillers, but there are men who are willing to be friends in your life and show up for you. And so sometimes they don't even know, because I always say, and I learned this later, even after writing the book, having the conversation, and I was like, you know what? I realized our sons need the four core too, and so sometimes our sons are raised without their fathers. And so our sons who raised fatherless get into relationships, with someone who also is fatherless. So they don't know what they're supposed to give you because they never got it either. So you both have to kind of find that middle ground of, okay, this is what we need, so now let's say I have the core four. Now I ask my husband, this is what I need from you, and then now he has something to look at and be like, oh, okay, this is what that looks like. Okay, if he had his father, then he probably like, oh yeah, I know what that is. But if he didn't, then now he even has a blueprint to how do I communicate with my wife, and even more importantly, how do I communicate with my daughter? And so I think it just takes some learning, and it takes some intentionality on your part to really want the answers. Because if you're looking for it, there are millions of fatherless daughter conferences and books and things like that. I've read plenty of books, because I came into it off my own life experience, but I didn't want to only speak from my life experience. So I did the research. I was writing, reading the books and things like that, so that I can even understand more of what the effects of fatherlessness is. Because, and I always say, I don't have that experience. My parents were married my whole life, and I don't even have the same experience that my daughter has, because her mom was raised in a fatherless home. And so even though my daughter wasn't raised in a fatherless home, her whole life, or I don't even necessarily say father, let's just say absent, because I was there, but I wasn't physically there. So even though my daughter wasn't, I was still involved, she's still living that experience that I don't even know. You know what I'm saying? Because my dad's still here. My mom passed away, but my dad's still here, still very active in my life and all of our lives. And so that also put a tension in me that even when I'm communicating with my daughter as her being a young adult now, I have to give her more grace, because I can't even identify with what you're going through right now. Even as much as I want to protect you, as much as I want to be here for you, as much as I want to be super dad, I have to admit that there are some parts of me being a father to you at this point that I don't even know, because I have never been in a point where my dad wasn't here, all the time. And so I'm still learning, even in my relationship with my daughter, how to show up in a way where she still feels loved and appreciated and all of those things. And so it's a never ending journey. It's a never ending journey, but you have to decide that you want to take it. And then once you get started, you can't give up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
So good.
Well, thank you. So this has been fantastic. I could really, I know you have to go, but we could really talk to you for an hour. But and if you can just, we're gonna, just close out now. If you could just stay backstage for a few minutes?
Yeah,
Can you,
yeah.
can
And
you do it?
before we go, let me definitely say thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And to anybody who's looking to check out the forecourt, just go to ebooks.by ejames.com. I made it real simple. ebooks.by ejames.com. Also, when you go there, I did forget about our sons. There is also an ebook called From Males to Men, which is a book for our sons and raising our sons. And so there's definitely there. And also check out the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Again, I love having the conversation with fathers, and now we're having daughters on to talk about those relationships and the memories. We've even had some who fathers are no longer here, but he being able to have the conversations about the memories that their father shared with them and the lasting imprint that he made on their lives. I think I love the podcast, but I could be biased, you know. But I think I think it's entertaining, and I also think it's very knowledgeable. And if nothing else, it's a definite expression of fathers and daughters. And I haven't had my daughter on. She's been on my first podcast, but she haven't been on that one yet. So I'm going to get her on there, and let's have a nice discussion too.
Well,
Awesome.
thank you so much. We are happy to have you, and we would even love to have you back again another time. And thank you so much. And we will be right with you. We put that's the link to my book, but we're going to put the link to his book right now again. So please check that out and support the work. It's hard to get the message out if people don't buy the message and then spread it. And so we need you to support that. Thank you, Ernest. We really appreciate you.
No problem.
you.
Thank you guys for having me. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you guys
Thank
having me.
All right, good people. That was a fantastic conversation. How about it? Was a fantastic conversation. I'm so happy to have him with us. And I will just mention that, our book, my book, Pray It Forward, came out December 26th. It's been really a blessing. But what we're doing is called Pray It Forward Live. So every morning, Monday through Friday, we do 6 a.m. and noon, where I actually do a live battle charge. It's short, it's tight, and it's powerful. And so we invite you to that.
Yes.
We'll drop the link there for you. But it's on this YouTube channel. So if you come here, you will see there's a playlist with all the Pray It Forward lives from the past. And then we do it every morning. And then on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, we do it at 8 a.m. and just do one. So we'd love to have you. The link to the book is here in the comments. And so we would love for you to support that and just spread the word. We want to get this movement going. Thank you all for your support. And finally, if you are interested in me coming to speak for an event, asinglemission.com, click on the tab Book Lorraine, and you will find me there. For those who are joining us in our Afterwise, the link is in the, do we have the link in the chat? Let's put the link in the chat. And in the comments, just click here in the comments. If you want to join us backstage and talk a little bit more, we would love to have you. Thank you all, ladies. This was great. It was nice to kick off. This was a great season opener, and season 4 is going to be even better than the seasons before. We just want to get better and better. So until next time, make choices that will help you live, love, and marry wiser. God bless you.
Bye all.
Good night.